What I'd like to try to do today is for us to cover, beginning at verse 33. I think that's about where David ended. I'd like for us to kind of read that passage. I'm going to read, you probably won't recognize, I'm reading from the American Standard 1901. The reason I use that edition is because years ago, the Gospel Advocate in their commentary series, you know, they used the American Standard of 1901, you know, for that commentary. This one uses the New American Standard, the one David's been using. But if you would, let's begin in verse 33, and we're going to read down through the end of the chapter. I think it'll be a good breaking point for David. It may not be 11 verses, but it'll be a place for us to be in. Pilate therefore entered again into the praetorium and called Jesus and said unto him, Art thou the King of the Jews? Jesus answered, Sayest thou this of thyself, or did others tell thee concerning me? Thine own nation, Pilate answered and said, Am I a Jew? Thine own nation and the chief priests delivered thee unto me. What hast thou done? Jesus answered, My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight, that I should not be delivered to the Jews. But now is my kingdom not from hence. Pilate therefore said unto him, Art thou a king then? Jesus answered, Thou sayest that I am a king. To this end I have been born, and to this end am I come into the world, that I should bear witness unto the truth. Every one that is of the truth heareth my voice. Pilate said to him, What is truth? And when he had said this, he went out again unto the Jews, and saith unto them, I find no crime in him, but ye have a custom that I should release unto you one at the Passover. Will ye therefore that I release unto you the King of the Jews? They cried out therefore again, saying, Not this man, but Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a robber. What I'd like for us to do is kind of review Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. John takes about half of his gospel account basically just this week, the last week, and that, the majority is just of, you know, the trial and the crucifixion. But of the last week of our Lord's life. You know, Matthew, maybe a fourth or a third, and whatever, Luke, you know, is Mark maybe. But they all basically spend a considerable amount of time about the last week of the Lord's life. So what I'd like for us to do is kind of, let's review. Okay, let's start at the Garden of Gethsemane. Okay, what do you know starting at the Garden of Gethsemane? You don't know anything?
Jesus went there to pray.
He went there to pray and whatever. Judas leads the mob there. He is arrested. So let's just start. He is arrested. Okay, now he has to be charged with a crime. Where do they take him? They take him to Annas. Why do they take him to Annas? Caiaphas is the high priest, but basically in essence what? The high priest was appointed for a life term, just like our Supreme Court. So they take him to Annas. Annas is the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who basically has the title of high priest. Okay? All right? What questions did Annas ask Christ to try to find a charge? You remember? No, you don't. Okay, I'll tell you. He said, what about your disciples? He wanted to know about his disciples. Where were they? How many were they? And then he said, want to know about your doctrine. Christ's response was, I spoke openly in the synagogues and the temple. You know, ask the people that's heard me. Ask the people what I've said and whatever. Don't go for hearsay. Find the facts. If you're going to make a judge, if you're going to be the judge, you seek for the facts. So Annas, it's like, I can't find the charge. sends him to Caiaphas. Caiaphas, according to Matthew's account, basically just says to him, they're trying to find, and there's false witnesses that come. And these witnesses' testimony doesn't agree. Okay, so it's like, well, we can't use them. Then there's two that come, and their witness is, well, he said he'd destroy the temple, and rebuild it in 3 days. Well, their witness together doesn't really jive. It doesn't coincide. So Caiaphas, basically, in Matthew's account in the King James says, I adjure you, are you the Christ? What does adjure mean? Put your hand on the Bible. You swear to tell the truth, whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. What does he have to do now? He has to tell the truth. So Jesus answers him. And what's his answer? Yep. You've said it. Mark records it in Mark 15 and verse 4. You've said it. In other words, do you really understand what, thou sayest? Thou sayest. Now John's going to add further information to that. And this is where we're going to pick up in just a moment. So at that point, Caiaphas rips his clothes. What was that significant of?
Distress.
Well, the stress and whatever, but it's like, when they were just absolutely whatever, In other words, they said, that's blasphemy. He has claimed to be the Son of God. What further need do we have of any witnesses? He's guilty of what?
Blasphemy.
Blasphemy. Now, they take him to Pilate, okay? And they won't enter the praetorium because they're not going to be defiled. So they take him to the praetorium, and Pilate has to come out to him. And he wants to know what's the charge. And, their response in John's account, well, we wouldn't even have brought him to you if he wasn't an evildoer, if he hadn't done something wrong. In other words, you just go ahead and convict him, and do away with him right now, But what do we know? We know that they, even by their own confession, they can't kill him. Because Christ has already predicted the type of death that he will suffer. Christ is in charge. They aren't. They just don't realize it. So here we have the situation. Pilate goes out to him. And as we pick up in verse 33, Pilate therefore entered again into the praetorium and called Jesus and said unto him, Art thou the King of the Jews? Mark says, he basically said, Thou sayest. Did Christ answer that question right off? Are you the King of the Jews? Let me read something to you from Guy N. Wood's commentary. Jesus answered, Sayest thou this? This is additional information. Sayest thou this of thyself, or did others tell it thee concerning me? Who told you? Well, how do you know it? Is it from your own personal knowledge? Or did other people tell you he claims to be King of the Jews? And here's the comment that he makes. He says, from Mark's report, we learn that Jesus answered, Thou sayest. A Hebrew way of expressing an affirmation. And this he followed with the question of our text, which by implication made clear to Pilate that Jesus did not claim to be a king in any way which would constitute any threat to Roman power. It said, in effect, does this inquiry stem from personal knowledge that I have made such claims? Or were you prompted to this by others? It was vitally important to the Lord's cause that it be made clear in what sense the phrase King of the Jews was being used. Was it as the Romans would use it, or as the Jews did? If it were used in a political sense, as in the latter case, he could repudiate it as being utterly groundless. If in a religious sense, he must accept it. Otherwise, the impression might go forth that he had repudiated his claim to the Messiahship. Moreover, the question pinpointed the fact that his accusers were Jews, not Romans, and the latter having no interest in the claims of Jesus, the latter being the Romans. What's the difference here? If he says, I'm King of the Jews, what's the problem?
It'll be a threat to the Romans.
It's going to be a threat to the Romans. And it's also, if he says he's King of the Jews, he's going to confirm what? That he is the Messiah. But if he denies, what about the Romans? What about the politics involved here? It's either political or religious. And if it's political, there's a threat to the Romans. If it's spiritual, but it's not just the Jews that he's king of.
Well, Pilate did not want to judge Jesus. He thought that that was a problem for the Jews, and that they should handle it.
He basically told them, go take care of it by your laws. You brought him here, whatever. I'm not interested in your Jewish religion. You know, you take care of your own business. But they couldn't. They could have scourged him by Jewish law. You know, they could have basically excommunicated him and whatever, but they couldn't take his life. You know, we know Stephen was stoned, and it's like, I'm wondering, okay, how did they get away with that? I don't know. So Pilate answered, am I a Jew? Thine own nation, the chief priest, delivered thee unto me. What hast thou done? What's the charge? Pilate's got to have a charge. To pronounce a death sentence, he's got to have a charge. And this, you know, just because it's your Jewish custom or your religion, whatever, that's not going to wash with the Romans. Turn to Luke 23. So if we can kind of keep things in sequence, we can kind of begin to follow this and see what's going on. In Luke 23, Bruce, you in Luke 23? You got the King James? Okay, read some for us. Just start at verse 1.
Okay. And the whole multitude of them arose and led him unto Pilate. And they began to accuse him, saying, we found this fellow diverting the nation and forbidding to give tribute to Caesar, saying that he himself is Christ the King.
Okay, stop right there. Okay, what charge now? They know we can't bring up just blasphemy. Pilate's not going to take that charge. He's got to have a charge. So what do they have to, they got to come up, what's the charge they want now?
Conspiracy.
Tax evasion.
He's a conspiracist, he's a seditionist. You know, he's not paying the taxes and he's telling people you don't have to worship Caesar. Now you've stepped over into the Roman area. And now, here's Pilate. Now he's got to deal with it, as Jenny points out. And we're gonna discuss that kind of hopefully at the end of the class. It's like, now Pilate, here he's got, but Jesus answers him, said, my kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, then would my servants fight that I should not be delivered to the Jews, but now is my kingdom not from hence. It's not an earthly kingdom. What did the Jews expect? What did they want?
wanted Jesus to save them from the Romans.
They wanted the king, they wanted the Messiah to come in and I guess deliver them from Roman bondage. And we want a physical, earthly kingdom, and we want the Messiah to do it. And that was their expectation, and that's what they insisted had to be done.
They also didn't want to, they wanted to continue the Jewish religion. They did not want, I mean, this was
Yeah.
their livelihood, this their tradition. They wanted their cake and eat it.
Yeah. You remember the passage where it was like Caiaphas basically in John 11, he basically said it's necessary for one to die for the kingdom. Why? Because they're going to come and take our place and our nation away. We're going to lose our power. You get involved in politics and what happens? It's power. It's how can I get things done? How can I have my way?
And now, a lot of times it doesn't matter how corrupt or what kind of lies are told.
It doesn't matter. But Christ answers him and he says, my kingdom's not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, what would have happened? He would not have told Peter to put up his sword, you know. How many legions of angels could he have called? It's not an earthly kingdom. And when are we going to get that through our heads? My kingdom's not of this world, he said. If my kingdom were of this world, then my servants would fight. If you wanted a physical kingdom, what's the only thing that someone cannot take from you? Your soul. Nobody can take your mind away from you. No one can take your power of choice away from you. God gave it to us. We're created in His image. We've got free will. And no one can take your free will away from you. Now, the devil will do everything he can to convince you, to get you to doubt, to get you to be fearful, whatever, any way he has to make you start thinking and questioning and doubting, and then he's got us. It's just like he told Cain. How many of you remember Steinbeck's East of Eden? One of my favorite books. He told Cain, he said, sin's couching at the door and its desires to have you. But you can overcome it. You have the power to overcome it by your choice. It's either serve Christ, serve God, or serve self. It gets down to just that. Well, anyway, here we go. He says, but now my kingdom is not from hence. Notice Pilate's response. Pilate therefore said unto him, art thou a king then? Brother Woods, and I think David, well, also in his commentary, this is like emphatic. In other words, it's like saying, you're a king? You're a king? He said, Pilate therefore said to him, art thou king then? Jesus answered, thou sayest that I'm a king. To this end I have been born, and to this end I am come into the world, that I should bear witness unto the truth. You swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. What's the standard? Not my opinion. Not yours. What is the standard that we must go by? Thy word is truth. And if we want to know the truth, let me ask you a question. There's a big argument about whether Pilate really wanted to know it, because what he goes on and he says, Christ says, everyone that is of the truth heareth my voice. If you really want to know the truth, if I really want to know the truth, what am I going to do? I'm going to go where it is. I'm going to search for it. I'm going to do all I can to find it. I was born in 1946. Y'all can figure it out. In that year, there was a cartoon version by Walt Disney. At that point in time, Disney had some good ideas. I don't know about today. He's gone. I don't know if he'd turn over, they say turn over in his grave to see what's going on at Disney World, Disneyland. But the movie was Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. I'm not going to ask you to name them. Okay? Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? What was the mirror's answer? It's not you. It's not you. When we look in the mirror of God's Word, and as long as we continue, we see a true picture. But James says, what happens when you walk away from the mirror?
You forgot what kind of.
You forgot. You don't remember. You're not the fairest. So, here he goes. Pilate said unto him, what is truth? Do you think Pilate really wanted to know what truth was?
He just wanted to be rid of this problem.
He wanted to be rid of the problem, I guarantee you. That's what I believe. He wanted to be rid of it. He did not want to have to deal with this. Well, why did he deal with it then?
Forced on him.
Well, that's going to get into a deep discussion.
I think Pilate's conscience was eating him alive.
Think his conscience was bothering him? I think he was a politician. I don't think he had much of a conscience.
I think when his wife got involved.
Well, yeah, and that's another point. His wife said, don't you have anything to do with that just man, because I've suffered from a dream tonight because of him. Don't get involved in this. Good advice. But he still got involved. Notice what he said. Pilate saith unto him, what is truth? And when he had said this, how do you know just from this verse right here, how do you know that Pilate really didn't want to know the truth? And when he had said this, he went out again unto the Jews and said unto them, I find no crime in him. Did he stick around for an answer? Nope. What is truth? What's the one thing that the world needs? What's the one thing that the Lord told us to do? Go into all the world and preach the gospel. What is the gospel?
Good news.
It is the good news. Why is it good news?
Because you can be saved.
Because you can be saved. And you can't be saved without the truth. They shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. But what do you have to do when you hear the truth? Oh, it's not me in the mirror? There's got to be a change. Y'all remember Wednesday night when David used the example about riding on that hay wagon and he'd hold the reins and he just had the reins? I got to thinking about that. In the Old Testament, a lot of times it'll say that he judges the heart and the reins. What are your reins?
Guides you.
Kidneys. Why am I pointing here when I say kidneys? They believe that your affections and your will were in the deepest part of you, And that's why they referred to the reins as the kidneys. Your will. When they were pricked in their heart, Jeremiah even says they were pricked in their heart and their reins. What causes a person to yield and obey the gospel? Intellect. Can you know the truth? Pilate going to know the truth? Is he going to react to it? He is not interested in the truth. Your emotions. All three's involved. Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with what? All thy heart, all thy soul, with all thy mind, and I think Mark adds with all thy strength. Is there anything left? Have you got anything left that you could keep from God? Intellect, mind, heart, emotions, and soul. What is your will? What is your will? What do you will to be? Paul said what? What wilt thou have me to do? What must I do to be saved? What's going to crack my will? Just your intellect won't do it. Didn't do it for Pilate. Just your emotions won't do it. There were those that believed in Christ, but because they knew they'd get kicked out of the synagogue, what? Nope, we're not going to confess him. What does it take to crack us? It takes all of it. It takes our will, that we relent, that we repent, that we confess, that we obey. Pilate wasn't interested in the truth. He tries his best to get out of it. He's in the horns of a dilemma. And how do I get out of this? Well, if you'd have just done what you knew to do to begin with. I want to read to you something. Pilate had fully satisfied himself that Jesus was in violation of no Roman law, and he so informed the leaders of the Jews. I is emphatic, as I oppose to you cannot condemn him, since he is guilty of no crime against the power I represent. Now listen, as David would say, are you with me? Simple justice would have dictated that the Lord be released on the spot. But Pilate was highly sensible to the political aspects of the case. And he thus sought a solution which would not bring down on his head the wrath of the aroused Jews. At this point, he would not condemn him, but he lacked the courage to release him. As is so often the case, when men find themselves in a situation where personal interest and duty conflict, selfishness prevails. I would recommend to you this book. Set in order the things that are lacking. Every one of us need to take a good and honest look at ourselves, and we need to make sure, God, what will they have me to do? I'm looking in the mirror, God, and it ain't pretty. What would you have me to do? You know, the most difficult part for all of us, especially elderships and whatever, is discipline. What's the most difficult part for you as a parent? Why do we so often fail? Some hindrances to proper discipline I see, this was from the guy that was a fellow elder with this fellow who wrote this book. Cowardice. Yes, too many of us are just plain scared to step out in faith to do God's will. What are we afraid of? Unpleasant repercussions? They will surely come, especially in cases where the congregation has not been properly educated or instructed on the subject of discipline. Why discipline? To save a soul, to keep the church pure, to do God's will. He said the other reason is politics, otherwise known as favoritism or partiality. God's no respecter of persons. You think He expects us to be that way? To not be partial and judgmental? Love one another. And he says, another reason we don't do it is because of futility. We've tried that, but it just didn't do any good. Many times those who are disfellowship find refuge in a neighboring congregation. Such ought not to be if they were corrected for the right reasons and in the right way. Pilate doesn't want to deal with it. He wants to. What does he do? Go a little further. He washes his hands. What could that do, Pilate? You think you're innocent?
Feel better.
Well,
At the moment, I'm
yeah.
not sure.
It's like, what good that do? You're the one that had to make the call. But here you are, stuck between the horns of a dilemma, and you're trying to figure out, well, how am I going to do this and not make this and mad, and not make that and mad, and whatever. Thou shalt know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's a lot easier to know what the right thing is than it is to actually do the right thing.
Exactly. Exactly, for every one of us. It's easy intellectually to know what's right. Emotionally, we get ourselves involved. Who's Pilate looking out for? He's looking out for Pilate because he knows what's happening right here. Are the Jews going to shut up? When you tell your child no, did they, immediately that took care of it? Now, I know one that it pretty well took care of. When she said no, it meant no. And Whitney got it. But most, like us people with weak up here, we are going to test it. Why? I want to know that what you tell me is true. Why? Because I want to know that you truly love me and you want me to be safe. You want me to be blessed and joyful and happy. It's not easy. It is not easy. And I mean, this is crazy. I kind of feel sorry for Pilate. He got this dumped on him. And he does everything he can to get himself out of this mess. But he just gets deeper and deeper in it. What's the next step he tries to get out of this? He said, you take him and judge him according to your law. Whoop, that didn't work.
They were determined to kill him.
They were determined to kill him, whatever, and they're not going to hush. And he knows, and it could be a right, and whose head's going to roll if it's a right? His. Hey, you're supposed to be in charge of this place. He tries to send him to Herod. Why? Whoop, here's another way out. Herod was responsible for Galilee. You know the Herodian family, they weren't Jews. They were king of the Jews, but they weren't Jews. Look up about, I mean, you talk about, days of our lives, you look up about the Herods. Killed his wife, killed his 2 sons, whatever. Herod the Great, what did he do? When Christ was born, the wise men, don't go back that way, whatever. Killed all the babies. It didn't work. Herod sends him back. Herod just wanted to see some miracles. I want to be entertained. Not going to entertain you. I'm not even going to answer you. Put a purple robe on him, mock him, whatever, send him back to Pilate. And then they become friends. I don't know what the issue was between them, whatever, but it's like, oh, you sent him to me? Well, thanks a lot. You recognize that I've got power. Whatever, okay. Now I'm sending him back to you. So he sends him back to Pilate. Now Pilate, now what I do? I mean, what if you were Pilate? How are you going to handle this? Oh, here's a way out. But ye have a custom that I should release unto you one at the Passover. Will ye therefore that I release unto you the King of the Jews? Whoa, what do they say? No. What was Barabbas? Well, you know about him from what you studied. He was a thief, a robber, and a murderer. And he was one who led an insurrection or sedition. They ought to have been that's what the Jews wanted. We'd rather have Barabbas. Let us have Barabbas. What do you want me to do with Christ? Crucify him. And we'll stir up this mob until we get our way. They cried out again, saying, not this man, but Barabbas. Now Barabbas was a robber and a murderer. One that should have been, because of rightfully charged, sentenced. Does that not point out to you that the innocent die for the not innocent?
The only pure being ever to walk the face of this earth was being judged by these evil. To me, that is almost as bad as the actual crucifixion.
Tragically, many people of the world still choosing the world rather than Jesus. Thus, not in the word, but in deed, also saying, not this man, but Barabbas. Their myopic eyes are resistant to spiritual light, and their dull ears are out of resonance with the clear, sweet voice of truth. And thus they see only what is material and hear only the alluring sounds of the world. Their hearts being hardened to the appeals of a higher, nobler nature, sadly these too, like the rebellious Jews of old, will discover their error only when it is too late. As Jenny says, the perfect sacrifice. No sin. Died for the sins of the world. My sins. The whole world. The innocent for the guilty. God, What price are you willing to pay from the beginning of time, before time began? What price are you willing to pay in case we make the wrong choice? Thank you for your attention. Thank you for your participation.